Welcome to the Awakening Exchange podcast, hosted by Stephen Matthew Clark. Join us as we explore stories of transformation, growth, and redemption within the justice system. Through insightful conversations with experts and individuals who have overcome adversity, we'll uncover the potential for change and the power of education, programming, and support. Get ready to dive into a world of second chances and inspiring journeys. This is the Awakening Exchange podcast, transforming from the inside out.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Awakening podcast. My name is Stephen Matthew Clark. I will be your host. And with us this evening, we have a very special guest, Miss Shelly Winner. I'm excited to have Shelly with us for many different reasons and to learn about what she's doing. Shelly, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So happy to have you. Yeah, I'm really stoked. I mean, you've been on a journey. You've been on a pretty incredible journey with your life, and I'd love to get into that with you this evening.
Yes, I would be more than happy to share that journey with everyone.
Beautiful. And I think probably a good starting point is maybe just introducing yourself, maybe where your feet are on the ground, and maybe just getting right into, kind of where you were, then we'll kind of touch on that and what happened, and then where you're at now and some of the wonderful things that you're working on. So maybe just where you're at, where your feet are on the ground, and maybe what happened back in the day.
Sure. So I currently today, I work for a rather large tech company. I'm sure you guys have heard of them, called Microsoft. And I'm doing great. I've bought a home. I'm married. I've been out of prison now for almost a little over 7 years and have been clean and sober. But years ago, that was not the case for me. I was struggling with addiction to methamphetamine and prescription pills. And I think it's important to talk about our childhood, because I think our environment that we grow up in has a lot to do with the path that we head down in our life, as adults.
Mm-hmm.
And so growing up, I had very young parents. I think my mom was, she was 17 when she got pregnant with me, 18 when she gave birth to me. And my father was also 18 as well. I grew up in poverty, and my father eventually became an addict, and he was in and out of prison most of my childhood. First it started with alcohol, and he would get arrested for drunk driving. I think he had somewhere around like 17 DUIs. I mean, it was just unbelievable amount of DUIs.
17 DUIs. That's incredible.
He could have learned his lesson after like 1 or 2, but 17, yeah, it was like, okay. And he eventually went from alcohol to hard drugs, and he was at one point, I lived with him for a very short period while I was in high school, and he started selling drugs from the house. And he was selling methamphetamine. And so there were people in and out at all hours of the night buying drugs for my dad. And he told me that there was only one rule of the house. And, if I ever wanted to do any hard drugs, that I had to do them with him. And I'm like, freshman in high school. Not to mention that he got me drunk for the first time when I was 11 years old. He taught me how to play quarters, me and one of my friends from school, and got us totally shit-faced drunk. I remember going to school the next day hungover. But you know what? It really was my dad's way of bonding with me. He didn't really know any better. It's like this losing kind of loop I refer to. it's this cycle of like toxicity that's just passed down from generation to generation, and no, you can't break the cycle until you learn a different way of life. And so,
That's right. That's right.
yeah,
You can't break the cycle until you learn a different way of life. And I think, you said it best. And what I like about that is you're not taking a victim role. What you said is my dad, that was his way of bonding. And isn't that the reality? Like,
yeah,
our parents really do the best they can from what they've learned from their
yeah,
parents and so on and so forth. And it gets passed down. And they think they're doing us a favor and bonding with us by playing
right.
quarters or having a couple toddies with us. And they don't really understand what it's actually doing, but they're showing up being the best version of themselves they can because that's where their consciousness is at that time, right?
Exactly. And that's the frequency he was operating on. And so I remember the next day, going to school, he had to drive us to school. And the car that he had, I mean, we were so poor. He needed brakes. We had no brakes. So he was using the emergency brake to stop at every stoplight. It's like, at 11 years old, I'm thinking, this is crazy.
Yeah, right.
But he drops me off at school, and I just remember walking around school and I was feeling like woozy, and looking back, I had a hangover. I was definitely hungover.
11 years old, hungover
Yeah.
at school.
Yeah.
Holy Moses.
Yeah.
Came from a freaking ride with an e-brake. Thank God you
Yeah.
arrived there. All right. Goodness gracious.
Yeah. Growing up in poverty is always fun.
Yeah, exactly. Government cheese, big blocks,
Oh
powdered
yeah,
milk, all
government
the good
meat.
stuff.
I
Yeah,
used to get
government meat.
I used to get so embarrassed because my mom would get the food stamps,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd go grocery shopping, and when it came time to pay, I would leave. I didn't want to
Go to the gumball machine and buy the
Yeah, I'm like,
gumballs that
I'm
you're
out
not
of
really
here.
buying. Yeah.
It was like the most embarrassing thing ever. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so I would leave the vicinity of the where the checker was, bagging the groceries. uh, but yeah, that was my influence growing up. My mom, she did the best that she could, but dealing with my father was not easy. And I think although she didn't struggle with addiction like my father did, her addiction was men. And so here she was, basically a single mom trying to raise my brother and I, and it was a lot for her. And so she was trying to quickly find somebody to replace my father, but at the frequency that she was operating on, the type of men that she attracted were not the best men. And so it was just like this constant rotation of men as well. And then, she's wanting to spend time with them. And so then my brother and I basically were like, it felt like we were a burden in her life.
That's got to be hard when your dad's not there, and then your mom, your caregiver, she's preoccupied with other things to soothe and make herself feel better, and then there's you and your brother looking for love and attention and probably not finding it. So what do you do to find that love and that attention?
Seeking friendships with people that I probably shouldn't have, seeking relationships with people that were not operating on a very high frequency because I felt loved and accepted and not judged by them. And because they operated on the frequency I was operating on. I mean, like attracts like.
That's right.
And so I attracted, the same type of people that my father was. And all I knew was this party life. With my mom, not being present in our lives, she would just drop us off at a family member's house. It was actually my great aunt. She was in her 70s, almost 80s, 80 years old. And she didn't have the capacity to properly care for my brother and I, but it was like, it was a roof over our head. It was, you know, my mom's way of just dropping us off so that she could go do what she wanted with her friends and boyfriends. And so my brother and I basically raised ourselves. And I started hanging out with, you know, more towards high school, I started hanging out with the partiers, the people that like to smoke pot and party. And I had a lot of fun in high school. I'm not gonna lie. But I didn't really do anything to set me up for success.
Right.
I didn't hang
So,
out with the people that were gonna help me become a better person.
mhm.
Yeah.
So you grow up, it sounds like there's a lot of adverse childhood experiences too, right?
Yeah.
A lot of little pieces of trauma.
Yeah.
You grow up in that setting, you get into high school, you're partying, you're having fun, you're doing those things that feel good to you. What happens? What happens next?
Well, I started experimenting with drugs. First it was marijuana, then it was methamphetamine, and then opiates. And then I found out that when you mix methamphetamine with opiates, it was like really, really cool high for me.
Okay. It
And
happens.
so I got addicted to the opiates, and, you know, going through withdrawals from meth is not the best, but, you know, withdrawing from opiates is a whole different ballgame.
That's
And
right.
and so for me, it was like, okay, what do I need to do to get more opiates? And then when I would run out of opiates, my next go-to was heroin. It was whatever I could do to, you know, stop the aches and pains and those terrible withdrawals. But I lived my life in addiction. I mean, I started experimenting in high school. And then I think I started experimenting with pot around 13. And then I never did hard drugs with my dad, though, believe it or not. I just thought it was weird. I could have done hard drugs with him, but I didn't start doing hard drugs till I think 17 was the first time I tried meth. And I started experimenting with meth. And then when I was like 18 or 19, I really started getting hardcore into meth. For about 6 months of my life, I was doing it every day. Then I stopped for a little bit. Then I started doing coke. And then I went back to meth. And by the time I was 25, my 25th birthday, I was completely strung out. And from that time forward, from age 25 up until my arrest, I think I got arrested in 2014. So I think I was like 36 or 37, I think, around there, maybe. Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to do the math. I'm not good at math. But I was, you know, that's how long I lived in my addiction. And it was not, you know, it was like I couldn't function without doing, you know, drugs. I didn't have a productive life at all. I couldn't hold a job. It was just about living in my addiction. You know, waking up, okay, do I have enough drugs? No. Okay, I got to find drugs. Okay, found drugs. Now I got to do the drugs. Then I got to go to bed. You know, sometimes I go to bed, sometimes I wouldn't. Depends on how long I'd stay up, right?
That's the crazy cycle of that stuff. Yeah, you wake up
Oh yeah.
feeling nasty, the birds are chirping, I'll never do this again. Please just let it go away. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just
Goodness
lived my life
gracious.
in complete bondage to my addiction. And it was all about doing what I needed to do to get my next high. Eventually, I started selling drugs to support my habit. I actually moved to North Dakota at one point. There was back in the 2012 or 13, there was a big oil boom there. And I had previous bartending experience. And so one of my friends was telling me about this oil boom. And she said, you know what, you should really go out there and bartend because they're making like $1,000 a night in tips. And so I watched this documentary on the oil boom. And sure enough, they were talking about the money that the bartenders make because they've got all these camps that they set up because they were bringing people in to work on the oil rigs and everything. And there's nothing to do in North Dakota except drink. So everybody would go to the bar, all these men. And so that's why the bartenders were making so much money. And so I looked online to see if there were any bartending positions available. Sure enough, I found one. The guy called me, or I emailed him. He called me back for an interview and then said, hey, can you come up, at this date and time? And I said, sure. And so that date and time came, and I packed up everything in my car and I drove to North Dakota. And it was funny is the guy who had hired me and told me to come had forgot that he hired me.
Oh no, that's so you show up to North Dakota, you get to the bar, hey, I'm here, and he says, who are you?
He's like, oh my God, I totally forgot. I was
oh no.
Yeah. So he's like, okay, don't worry. He's like, I'm out of town right now, but my lead bartender or my head bartender, her name was Shelly too. He's like, she'll take care of you. You can stay at her house tonight. I'll be back in a couple days. So she was really nice. She let me stay at her house, and I had gotten sober. I had probably been sober for about 6 months. I mean, there were times throughout my addiction where I really wanted to do more, do better for my life. But the problem is I would try to do it on my own will. I had no skills. I hadn't learned skills to stay sober. And it would only last so long. And so I'd been sober for about 6 months, and then I get to North Dakota, and we get done with our shift. We go back to her house, and she's like, "Hey, you want to smoke some meth?" And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah." And they'll cut it with anything. It's every there's no really like big cities there. Everything's very rural. And every town is really kind of a small town. And and they have very strict laws on methamphetamine. But, it was enough to awaken my dormant beast. And so I called one of my good friends and I said, hey, send me an ounce, through the mail. And that's how it all
goodness gracious.
Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. So you awaken the beast in North Dakota in a house that you're not even supposed to be there. The bartender doesn't remember hiring you. You're out there throwing bottles. What do they call the oil rigger guys? They call them the drill dogs or there's some name anyway.
I know what you're talking about. I can't think of what that name's called. Yeah,
they have a pretty cool name. It's some cool name that they name these guys that bust their butt on these oil drilling sites.
It's crazy.
So you're out there making good money. You're not feeling the horrible meth. You call home to get some from Heisenberg. You make the connect. It starts happening.
A gram of meth goes for $250.
Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. You just in your mind, you just hit the freaking jackpot.
I just won the lottery. Like, seriously.
You just won the freaking lottery. You're up.
Yeah, in a state with nothing to do but drink. It's like the perfect breeding ground to like sell a bunch of drugs. Yeah, so I thought exactly. So I get an ounce of meth. So an ounce has 28 grams in it. So let's see here, 28 times 250, that's $7,000. I might have paid $800 for the ounce.
Oh, goodness gracious.
Let's see, 28 times 50. No, I paid Yeah, because if I paid $50 a gram, it would be $1,400, but I think I paid like 800 because I got a deal for buying in bulk. And then I turned around and sold every gram for $250. So then not only was I getting this really good meth from my connect back home, but then I'm making this, can I cuss? I'm making a shit ton of money. Okay.
Of course, nobody is going to catch on to who your name is out there because it's a small town.
That's what
There's not a lot of meth around. They'll never figure this out. They'll never figure out who has the stuff because it's a small town. I can blend right in. I can get away with this forever. They'll never figure this out. You're still young, not really. I got you. So
yep.
what I can imagine what happens next.
You just said it exactly how I thought it was going to be. And
oh boy,
little did
Shelly, the things we say sometimes to trick ourselves into believing our own bullshit, right?
I'm sitting.
The things we say.
So here I am. I'm getting like the best shit I think North Dakota's ever had in their state.
Of course. I've been smoking bathtub meth.
So I'm thinking to myself, I'll just get this 1 ounce and then I'll sell it. And then I'll be done. Doesn't work like that. Just like when I thought, oh, just smoke it this one time, I'll be done. No. So I get that money, and then that became my other addiction was making that type of money. And then, of course, it wasn't hard to build up clientele selling the stuff that I was selling. I mean, my stuff, when I got busted by the feds, they tested it and it was like 99% pure.
Goodness gracious.
So I'm selling the best stuff that's ever been brought into North Dakota. So people are coming to me left and right. And, I've got people coming in my house, in and out of my house. And I'm not thinking, oh, I'm in a small town. Everybody knows everyone else's business. So, here I'm sticking out like a sore thumb being this drug dealer, but I'm so high, I can't see clearly, but my meth brain was telling me I'm totally incognito. Nobody suspects anything.
Of course.
Yeah. And, people I was selling to started getting busted. And here's the thing too, when you're living in a very rural community that doesn't have a lot of meth, when people do get busted and they're high on meth, the cops are automatically going to question, like, where'd you get this?
Of course.
Yeah. Yep. But they really want to know, like, because I'm from Sacramento, and I was arrested for under the influence once. They never questioned me.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the only experience I had, but probably because they have so much going on in Sacramento that they just don't have time to.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
But in North Dakota they don't.
They got a little bit more time. You're in a Bible thumping state. Oh my God, you just brought the devil's dandruff in there, and they are not happy.
Yep. So some of the people I was selling to ended up getting busted, and so they're like, well, where'd you get the drugs? And they offered him to a deal to lower their sentence if they gave up.
Goodness gracious.
Yep. So
oh goodness gracious.
That's ultimately how I ended up getting busted. Long story short, somebody had lost their kid. This woman had lost her children from her addiction. And she ended up getting arrested again for drugs. And so they said, well, tell us who supplied you with these drugs. And she did. And then she set up a sting operation on me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So she called me up.
Nice.
Said she wanted to purchase 2 ounces of meth. And I went and met her in a parking lot, which is probably the worst place to go meet anybody, because it's like the perfect place for feds or cops to do a sting operation, because they can just like act like they're parked cars and you can't tell who's
You
who.
know, you know what's incredible? Since being in, you just said that I've seen these. They have these. I used to watch these shows, these mindless shows when I watched TV. And you're absolutely right. These cop shows, the majority of the bus that they make, they meet these people in like Walmart parking lots or
Yep.
Costco, like you said, Costco or Home Depots, these big
Yep.
freaking parking lots, exactly, so they can surveillance these people, or they have
Yep.
them. You're absolutely right. That's the truth. I mean, no, you think people would have caught on by this now, but
Yeah,
they're still showing up. You know, you got Joe Smith calling the local dealer up saying, "Hey, can you meet me at Walmart parking lot?" Why do you want to meet me at Walmart?
Like,
Oh, just a
no
just a
way,
good
dude.
place.
No way. I'm not
No,
meeting you in
no.
any parking lot.
Goodness gracious. People,
Yeah.
you think they'd learn by now, but they
Yeah.
don't.
So I fell for the trap. I went and I sold her the 2 ounces of methamphetamine. They had me, video, audio, the whole 9 yards, right? I was surrounded by police. As soon
Mark
as
Cash.
Yeah, and you know what's interesting is the big difference between like feds and state, right? Is the state would have arrested me in the transaction, like, oh, you broke the law, we're coming to arrest you. Not the feds. The feds are like, okay, you broke the law, let's write this down, we've got it all documented, and let's see how much more we can get on her. Then we're going to take all this evidence to the grand jury, we're going to get this indictment, and then 6 months later we're coming for you.
Let's I mean, this is funny, we're laughing a little bit, but can we just drop an anchor here for a second, because this is important stuff. And this is a realization that I've had in the prison system, right? So they know people are doing things, they put them under surveillance, and they build a case, and then they bust them.
Yep.
Why are we not in a nation where we love each other and we support each other? And if we know somebody else is doing something that is not up to speed or not ethical, we don't immediately intervene, like almost like that movie Minority Report. Remember, Tom Cruise is in that thing, and then they have these people that they know a crime is going to happen, and the people show up and they stop the crime before it happens.
Mm-hmm.
We live in a nation that allows the crime to go on intentionally.
Yep.
So we can build a case against the person and incarcerate them.
Yep.
Isn't
That's
that
crazy.
Think about the mentality of that. We could stop so much, so many murders, so many addictions, so many overdoses, so many mothers losing their children, so many divorces, so many incidences of domestic violence. If somebody would just intervene and say, hey, I love you and I care about you, you're doing things that are outside of the norm, let's get you some help.
Mm-hmm.
But instead they set back like Gargamel or
it's like a
Dr.
game.
Evil, like twirling their thumbs like it's a game. Right.
It's exactly
to fuel a effed up system that is about capitalism, that's about punishment, that's about punitive measures.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to say every single police department or every single person in law enforcement is like that, but that is the good old boy mentality.
Well, how about this? I mean, so they arrest you. They know you're struggling with addiction, but then they offer no rehabilitation.
No help.
Yeah. So they arrest you and then eventually release you as the same broken person they arrested you as.
Mm-hmm.
And then you
without any care or concern for your well-being, only with the intention of busting your ass down the road.
Exactly. So and right now the recidivism rates, what are 76%? That's
76 to 77%. Any one of our major highways, Shelly, I always say this to my talks, but any one of our major highways had a 76 to 77% fatality rate. Don't you think they would stop the highway and close it down and say, okay, what is the problem here?
Exactly.
But they don't. It's almost like the 76, 77% fatality rate. There goes that, you know,
Population control.
population control. Exactly. Jeez Louise.
Well, then,
And it,
well, you've got prisons that are, privately owned. I mean, that's a
oh
huge
my
conflict of
goodness.
interest.
Huge conflict. Oh yeah. Well, prison's
What are they going to
privately
do if they
owned.
don't have people in their prisons? They don't make any money.
Well, Victoria's Secrets, Abbott Labs. I think I'm not quite sure. I don't want to keep naming names, but I know those two for sure. They contract with privatized prisons to sew
Oh
their
yeah,
clothes, to make their pill bottles, to
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and we're perpetuating the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution, modern day slavery. We're allowing that to go on as a country and as a nation. And we know financial capital, social capital, and human capital are three reasons why people come back.
Right. Well,
It's
and
a
then,
crazy system.
oh yeah, and then they've ingrained it into society to discriminate against us upon reentry, and not and we're basically second class citizens. So it's like we do our time, we pay our debt, and then when we try to reenter society, nobody wants to. Over 50% of companies don't want to hire us. It's like, okay, so we're limited to basically minimum wage type jobs, which is going to break the cycle of poverty.
That's right.
And
That's right.
yeah, and then we get out of prison, and we've learned no skills to basically rehabilitate ourselves and become a better person. So it's like we don't know what we don't know until
We
teaches us a different way of life.
we don't know. We don't know what we don't know, and it's so true. It's like Jenny Burton. I'm sure you know who Jenny is. She says it real cool. It's like we need to start intentionally incarcerating people, which means we don't uproot them and put them into a system that just warehouses them and sets them there. We put them into a system that intentionally helps them rehabilitate, helps them gain their life. And I like what David DeRocher from Other Side Academy talks about. We put their ass to work. We don't let them sit there with the hat to the back, slagging their pants,
Right.
acting like a gangster. No, we hold them accountable and say,
Yes.
you're going to work this morning, buddy.
Yeah.
You're going to your treatment plan. You're doing what you're supposed to be doing. There's none of this sagging. Pull your pants up, put your belt on, put your hat to the front. It's time to grow up and act like a man today.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that mentality. I really, really do. But you're absolutely right. We perpetuate a system where people come in. There's not a lot unless you have a lot of intrinsic motivation and you can make those changes yourself.
Right.
People are released and then back into society to come up against this huge fight. And that's something that I admire about you. We'll circle back to the prison thing in a second, but I don't think that's what's most important. You did your time, you got out. What did you face? What did you face when you got out?
So I will say this. Okay, so my time in prison, so I get arrested eventually by the feds, and I end up going. I was very, very fortunate. I ended up going to one of the top prisons in the world. Actually, it's a federal prison where they send famous people. And the prison is located, it's called Dublin Federal Women's Prison. It's located in the Bay Area, which was also very much a blessing, because it was it wasn't a rural prison. And so it was easily accessible. And so it was flooded with volunteers and people wanting
amazing.
to. Yeah, because the more rural the prison, the less programs they have.
Was Sister Greta there?
What's that?
Sister Greta? Is that where Sister Greta works?
Sister Greta, I'm not sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. It doesn't ring a bell. It doesn't ring a bell.
So I get sent to one of the best prisons, and tons of volunteers, tons of programming there. I think they've now stopped all of the programming. They have some programs, but not like they had when I was there. And so I had access to so much knowledge. I took courses on forgiveness, which was like foreign to me, like how to forgive yourself, how to forgive others. Like, I took courses on anger management, public speaking, entrepreneurship. I did another very intensive like drug treatment program. I did inner child work. I didn't know what any of this was prior to prison. And so all of these programs.
Did you meet Fritzy?
Fritzy Horseman, that's my friend. Yes. No, she didn't have her program in my prison, but I volunteer with Fritzy in the prisons and
Compassionate Prison
Project. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. She's an amazing person.
Incredible.
Yeah. But yeah, I
Incredible.
mean, it's people like her that have transformed, so many lives, and it's because of their programs that these volunteers bring into the prisons. And it's not like the prisons are providing it. They provide the minimum, like that much.
Top 5 books you read. Top 5 books you read in prison.
What's funny is I didn't read a lot of books in prison.
Did you read 5 books?
I didn't even read 5 books, dude.
Did you read We're All Doing Time?
No, I didn't read any books. I was programming from the time I woke up until the latest I could program. I think it was like 5 or 6 o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came back, and I didn't read. I don't know if I still don't like reading. I think I have ADHD or something. I don't know. That's the story I tell myself, at least.
That's okay. That happens sometimes. There's no qualm.
But yeah, no,
at least you were doing something with your life and your time.
Oh yeah. Because I said, you know what? Here's my opportunity. I have all this time, and I'm not going to squander it away getting caught up in prison politics and hanging out with these, people that are not trying to better their life. So I really connected myself with the people that were into improving themselves. And I just, got into every program I possibly could. Once signups, happened, I was like one of the first who signed up for that program.
Nice.
And by the time I left prison, I had completely transformed my life and my way of thinking. And go ahead.
With that, before we go forward, I just have a question. So you said squander, which brings me to the evening Gata, which says, time will swiftly pass you by. Each one of us should strive to awaken. Mm-hmm. Take heed, do not squander your life. So you didn't squander your life. You had this awakening in prison. I'm interested in one thing that I'm really interested in this podcast is to find out about that moment, like the coming to Jesus moment or the coming to source moment, the moment that switch went off in your consciousness that said, I'm all done with this. I'm ready to make changes in my life. I want to change and be the woman, that source energy, that I want to get my frequency up and be that person that I'm really supposed to be. What was that moment for you?
All right. So a couple of things. After my arrest, after 2 weeks after my arrest, I found out I was pregnant. And it was very unexpected. And I knew at that moment, I knew I was keeping the child, and I thought, okay. And then I found out I was facing a 10-year prison sentence. I told you North Dakota has very strict crimes on meth. And because it was a federal offense, they have what's called mandatory minimum sentencing guidelines. And because the amount of meth that I sold, although it was only 2 ounces, it falls under the 10-year mandatory minimum sentencing guideline. And they got me for conspiracy too. So, here I am. I found out I was pregnant, and now I found out I'm facing 10 years. And I just was at this place in my life where I knew I needed to change. I didn't know how to change, but regardless if I got the 10 years or not, I wanted to change, not just for myself, but for my son, because I didn't want to be the same type of parent to my son that my father was to me. And also in the back of my mind, I thought, if I don't change, will my son follow in my footsteps? 70, I think it's 75% of children who have an incarcerated parent follow in that parent's footsteps right to prison. And I at least wanted to do what I could to try to change my life. And it wasn't until after I got arrested that I actually had access to knowledge or programs that could actually help me live a sober life and change my frequency that I was operating on. And then another reason why I wanted to change was, partly because I figured if I start this work now, by the time I get sentenced, maybe the judge will take a look at the work that I've been doing. Because while I was fighting my case, I also got myself into a treatment center. It wasn't just so that I could get a lower sentence, because I did want to learn the skills necessary to stay sober, but it definitely motivated me more so, to try to get, I guess, some leniency from the judge if he saw that I was really putting in that work to turn my life around.
Of course. Did it help?
It helped a little bit. Yes. So yes, I'll say it helps because I signed the deal for 10 years. The prosecuting attorney was like, nope, your mandatory minimum sentencing guideline is like 10 years. We're giving you 10 years. And that's what we're asking the judge for. When I went before the judge and presented, everything that I had done in the situation, he knew I had just given birth to my son. I had taken accountability for my, for my part. And he said, well, because of everything that you've done, I will stray from the guidelines and I'm going to give you 4 years. And so when he said 4 years, I'd never done more than like 3 months in jail for petty stuff. And so when he said 4 years, I was like, it was still a long time to me. And I had just given birth to my son. So I gave birth to my son October 1st, 2014. I go to my sentencing date. I think it was end of October. And he gives me that 4-year sentence. And like I literally had my mom flew in with my son because she came in for the birth. Then she left with my son. And then she came back for my sentencing date. And so I'm in the courtroom with my child, hoping he'll like be lenient with me. But he said, I'm sorry, Miss Winner, because I even said something to him like, well, I just gave birth to my son. Like, what about my son? He says, well, I'm sorry, there's consequences for your actions. You chose to break the law. And just because you had a child doesn't mean that you don't need to pay for those suffer the consequences of what you chose to do. And
sending you to prison is definitely the best way to pay for those consequences versus community service or helping.
That's what I was hoping for.
You sold meth to the Roughnecks. Now you must pay your price.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Isn't that amazing? That's our mentality of our criminal justice system too. That's the price you pay.
But you know what? It was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Absolutely. Beautiful.
Because at the time I thought it was the worst thing that he could have done. But then when I got to the prison and I realized I had access to all these various programs, I just thought, okay, all right, this sucks. I'm away from my son, but I've got this opportunity to really make the best of my situation. And I have access to all this knowledge that I knew was going to change my life. And so I took advantage of it. I mean, I absorbed it like a sponge. And so by the time I got out of prison, I had completely, my life was completely different. And so when I was in prison too, one of the things towards the end of my sentence, I had an affinity for technology. When I was getting high, one of my favorite things to do was build and fix computers. And I ended up getting really really good at it. No, I'm not even kidding. And so, I told you I lived in North Dakota, right? A very rural community. And we didn't even have a dry cleaners. Okay. Yeah, that's how
There's
how much.
no dry cleaners in North
There's
Dakota, and
no
all you
there's
have to do
no
is
dry cleaner in
dissect
my
and
town.
put back together computers.
Oh yeah. And so we didn't even have a dry cleaner, let alone a computer repair person.
Oh my
And
goodness gracious.
yeah. So, here I am, the drug dealer of the town. And I'm like, oh, I'll just start a computer repair business too. That'll be my side hustle in my drug dealing.
Oh my goodness gracious. She's the computer building, meth dealing,
Yeah.
freaking, oh my God,
Yeah.
roughneck making happy woman in North Dakota. Goodness great. They'll never figure her out.
I'll never figure it out. So I start fixing everyone's computers in town, businesses, people's computers. My company was called S Tech Computer Repair.
Nice,
And
nice. S-Tech computer.
yeah,
I'll get these done for you in the middle of the night, I promise. I'll have it done by
4
tomorrow.
o'clock call, I got you. 4 a.m. I'm there. So I had this affinity for technology. And so before I was about ready to get about 6 to 8 months before I was going to be released, I started really visualizing myself and my future and what I wanted. And I knew I wanted to work in tech. I knew working in tech was where the money was at. They had great money, they paid great. It was, a living wage, if not more than a living wage, right? Great benefits. I watched that movie, The Internship, with Vince Vaughn and Owen Wilson, and where they worked at Google. And I just thought, wow, that would be so cool to work at a big tech company. And so I started visualizing myself getting a job at a tech company. And I have this prayer journal. And so I started writing in my journal. I was very specific with God about what I wanted. And I just said, hey, I want to work at a big tech company. I don't want some dead end job. I'm not going to settle for some, dead end minimum wage type job when I get out. I want to make good money. I want a career. And I think I even told God that I wanted to work at Google. But
It's amazing.
yeah. And so I get out of prison and I'm completely transformed. I hit the ground running. I have high hopes, high aspirations. I literally feel alive for the first time. Like I have been blind and now I see. It was like, wow, when I learned that new way of life, that new way to think, that I completely changed my filter and my lens on how I looked at the world and replaced it with a more positive lens. It was like, whoa, like anything's possible at this point. And I was operating at such a high frequency, and the higher the frequency you operate on, the easier it is for you to manifest your dreams and the things.
That's right.
Yep. And so I got out of prison and I wasn't sure where to start. I had to go to the halfway house. So they released me in San Francisco. And I get to the halfway house and I'm thinking, okay, how am I going to get this, job making 6 figures working for some tech company? And now I don't have a college degree, and now I've got this stupid criminal record. Like this is going to be a challenge, but I remained hopeful. So I got out within 2 weeks. The school semester was starting, so I enrolled myself into college for a computer science degree, and I figured I'll just go to school and start working towards my degree, and we'll see what happens along the way. I was top of my class, 4.0. And I think it was, I got out in July of 2016. And by November 17th, I had an interview with Microsoft.
Amazing.
Yeah. So
that's absolutely and positively amazing. It speaks to the volumes of manifestation.
Yep.
it speaks to the volumes of belief. And you just said, I was blind, but now I can see. Do you know the root of that?
I don't think so.
John 9:25, I believe, is the Bible verse, but John Newton, I'll drop some knowledge I learned from Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Yeah.
This guy, John Newton, back in the days of slavery, they went out to pick up a boat of slaves. And they picked up this boat of slaves and they're bringing them back. And I believe it was England. They're out on the coast with this boat of slaves, and this immense fog comes in and they can't even see. There's so much fog, and this guy's out there. He's in the Methodist movement, and he's out there with all these slaves looking at him chained up. And he has this moment, this transformation moment, and he says, I'm bringing them back. I'm dropping them off. I'm not doing this. And he frees all the slaves. And that was amazing grace. How sweet thy sound. I was once blind and now I can see.
Yeah. Wow.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I hear from you. It's like you went through this transformation. You were once blind by the alcohol, swinging the bottles, dealing to the roughnecks.
I passed. Yeah.
Doing your thing, right? With not a lot of focus and vision. You did, but for the wrong reasons. You go through all this programming in prison, which sounds like a blessing. I say this to guys in prison all the time. It's like, you only know what you know. When you're banging quarters off the table with your dad at 11 years old or 12 years old or something, that's what you're learning. That's your conditioning, right?
Yep.
So you have this moment, and I admire you, by the way. You have this moment of clarity, this moment of grace that you wake up, you start seeing clearer and clearer and clearer. And you go through this conditioning. Thank God for programming. Thank God for prison for you, because intentional incarceration is what I heard you say.
Yeah.
You go through it. You have this broadening of your consciousness, a new conditioning in your mindset.
Yep.
You have enough mindset to program your reticular activating system with what you want in your reticular activating system. You know what that is. That's that thing in your brain where you start thinking about buying a silver BMW and all you see is silver BMWs.
Right. Yep.
And then the world opens up for you. There you are at Microsoft. What does that feel like?
Yeah. It was insane. So you have to remember though, I had no college degree and now I have this criminal record, and I'm thinking, how the heck am I going to get into some tech company? Like, they all do background checks. So one day I'm at the mall, and I'm in the Microsoft store, and one of the employees I was speaking with mentioned that they were hiring, and that we should, if I was interested, I should put in my application. So I did, not thinking they would ever call me back for an interview, but within 1 week they did. And when I got that interview scheduled, yeah. And I knew for me, this was low hanging fruit. It was like, okay, this is perfect because this is a retail store. This is an entry level position. Yeah. It's not the money I want to make, but you know what? The way I looked at it was that it's my foot in the door at one of the biggest companies in the world. And as long as I get my foot in the door, then I can work my way up. And my goal was to get into corporate. So, so my interview scheduled, and I prepared for that interview like my life depended on it, because it really did. And when I went into that interview, I did so well that she hired me right on the spot. And I was like, this is the best day of my life. I mean, I couldn't believe it. Here it was fresh out of prison, and I just got an offer from Microsoft, and it was euphoric. But then as soon as she offered me the job and I accepted, of course, in the back of my mind, I'm like, you have to do a background check. You better find out. Don't get too excited, because this road this road is not going to get any easier. Like you need to ask her, you need to tell her. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to tell her, because it's embarrassing, right? And you don't want to screw this up because this is like a special moment. But then I was like, you got to tell her. So I was like, okay, I have to tell you something. I'm so excited to accept this job offer, but I need you to know that I just got out of prison. I said it was for drugs. It's not who I am today, but do you think this is going to hinder me from moving forward? And I just paused and I held my breath. And she looked at me and she said, Miss Winner, we all make mistakes. And, thank you for letting me know that. Unfortunately, I don't have any say so. So what's going to happen is that you're going to have to do the background check, but just be honest about it. When they run the background check, I don't know if it's HR or their security team. But they said, the HR will let us know if we can move forward with your hire. And
Amazing.
So I went home, I filled out the background check, and I was honest, and I waited for the results. The results came back and they were flagged.
Oh,
And
no.
Yep. And they rescinded my job offer.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Yep.
So the world just opens up for you. Honesty, radical honesty you're practicing. What did we learn in recovery, right? You have to speak your truth and we don't hide behind our secrets anymore. We put it out there, and then you get flagged. And what does that feel like?
It was devastating. It was like, am I ever going to be able to move on from my past? Although I paid my debt to society, my slate is not wiped clean. And it's like wearing invisible, handcuffs.
Scarlet letter. Yeah.
Yep. And so I ended up challenging Microsoft. There just happened to be this special law in San Francisco that protects people from discrimination that have criminal records. And so I leveraged this law. I went and I challenged Microsoft. We went back and forth for like 3 months. And they came back with every excuse. Well, she hasn't been out of prison long enough. What if she relapsed? She's a liability. We can't trust her around our customers' information. And eventually, long story short, they had never heard of this law because I was the first person to ever leverage it. And
Unbelievable.
Yep.
Did they hear about the federal bonding program? Did they know about that?
I did bring that up to them. But see, here's the thing, is the San Francisco office knew about the law because they're the ones who told me about the law. That's how I learned about this law. Not the bonding program, but the fair chance ordinance.
That's right.
And but no one ever communicated it back to headquarters, which is in Seattle. And so I was the very first person to ever leverage this law. And I went toe to toe with one of the biggest tech companies in the world. And it was
my goodness gracious.
It was one of the scariest moments of my life. And I honestly did not think I was going to win, but I knew if I didn't fight, I would be left with what if for the rest of my life.
Did you have a lawyer? Did you have somebody in your corner? Or are you doing this by yourself?
The fair chance ordinance was basically my lawyer. And this girl, I mean, she was amazing. And, she's like, listen, we've never fought a company this big. She told me right away, that this is the biggest company they've ever fought. Or no, the biggest company they ever fought was Foot Locker. And but that she would go to
Foot Locker to Microsoft, so
Yeah.
Oh, goodness gracious. All right.
She wanted
to multi-billion, right?
Yeah, she wanted to prepare me for the potential of losing because they'd never fought. This was unprecedented,
Goodness gracious.
This journey had never been, done before. And so she just wanted to make sure that I was prepared that, there's a big possibility that we would not win. But I just said, okay, well, whatever happens, happens, but I'm not going to not fight. And because living with what if for the rest of my life was something I just was not willing to do. And so we fought, and 3 months later, they were like, well, we've never heard of this law, and well, this law is real and it's in place for a reason. And they weren't, needless to say, they weren't happy about it. And they ultimately, they gave me that second chance. I've been at the company now for almost 7 years and been a
Amazing.
I've been a consistent top performer. And I'm very,
Amazing.
very, very proud to say that last year, so I work my way into corporate like I had intended. I do B2B sales for Microsoft right now. And I'm proud to say that last year I finished as their number one B2B surface seller in the entire world. Yes, huge. There are I think over 200 sellers globally.
That's
And I
pretty
was
amazing.
and I was their number one seller. And I will say this too, most of my colleagues have college degrees and none of them have criminal records, right? And so it just goes to show you that like our past does not determine our potential.
Our past should not define the
Yeah,
person or the people that we become through our journey. Our past should
exactly.
not be a scarlet letter. We live in a nation with Christian values. But when it comes to forgiveness, letting go and seeing somebody, we're growth. It's psychological flexibility, right? We're not the same person we were 5 minutes ago.
Yeah,
Yet 5 years ago, or 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, when our situation or our bad choice happened, people are that's the amazing thing about the brain is the brain's neuroplasticity. The brain is always changing,
yeah, exactly.
and
Exactly.
we all have the ability to make these changes. So you've made these changes, your brain psychological, a complete makeover, the way you're viewing the world, the way you're viewing everything. You get this job, and now you're out selling, outperforming these people with the college degrees because of your. It's amazing. You can
Yeah,
never, ever, 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 judge a book by its
yep,
cover, right? Or you can't
exactly.
judge somebody by their past experiences. We are the sum of our experiences, but that does not mean that I'm that person that I was 20 years ago when I came in prison, right?
Exactly. Yep.
And
And not only that, but I ended up winning one of their most prestigious awards, which is called Gold Club.
you have
And
award? You have the award with you?
I so they didn't give me like an award,
Plaque?
like a plaque or anything, but I get um like I get to put the Gold Club, sticker on my LinkedIn and,
On your
or
business
photo.
card.
Yeah, yeah, all of that. And then they took me and my husband on a week paid vacation to Playa del Carmen. I mean, it was incredible.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness gracious. Playa de Carmen. Did you go over to Cancun?
Yep, I did. I
Of
did.
course. Did you go to Senior Frogs?
Yeah, yeah, we went by Senior
All
Frogs.
right.
Yes,
Did
we
you
did.
did
It
you
was
go to the mask where Jim Carrey wears the mask? You know what the
no,
I
no,
can't
I didn't.
remember the name of Bourbon. I don't remember, but
Yeah. So, so Microsoft has 150,000 employees and less than 5% of their employees win Gold Club,
oh
you know?
my goodness.
Yeah. And not only that, but what I would also say is truly, truly fantastic besides that success, right? Is the fact that Microsoft has completely embraced me. And, of course they didn't know what they didn't know. And this was unprecedented, this was new territory, right, for them hiring somebody with a criminal record. So they had all these fears just like any normal human being. But the great news was I was able to combat those fears and show them that those fears were not they were not valid fears, right? And they ended up joining the Second Chance Business Coalition, and
Oh my goodness.
they made a public statement about being a chance employer. And
That
now,
is
yeah,
amazing.
yep, yep.
Shelly, you're doing, there's a lot to talk about. I think you and I could probably talk for
Yeah,
about at least a
we
week
need to do
straight and
a
not
whole
get
nother
bored.
podcast on
We're,
Winner's Circle and my
we're,
book.
we're gonna come back. Yeah, I think we have to come back for another. I think the we should dedicate, sincerely, we should dedicate at least an hour's worth of time to talk about your book, the ideas, how that all
Yeah,
came about.
yeah,
I'd love to, I'd even love to meet your husband at some point in time and talk to him and explore that journey with the two of you, what that's like.
yeah,
Did you meet in after prison or in prison
yeah.
or?
I met him at the halfway house.
Oh my goodness. See,
Yeah,
this is what I'm talking about. There's like 11 stories within this one story right now. So I'd love
oh
to,
yeah,
I think it'd be pretty cool to get you both on at the same
yeah,
time and talk to you both. I think it would be it would do everybody justice that's listening to this podcast to hear about how your book, because Shelly, she hasn't shared this yet.
yeah.
I'm gonna let the cat out of the bag. She's
Okay,
written
go
a
ahead.
book
Well, I
and
know I'm writing a book right now. I'm
writing
finishing
a book.
a book. It should be ready to go by like beginning of November. Yeah.
You
It's
heard
going
it
to be
here,
my
ladies and
whole
gentlemen.
journey from prison. It's not labeled from prison to Microsoft, but it's going to, it's going to, yeah, it's going to tell my whole journey. My hopes for my book is not only to bring hope to others who have, are that was, traveled down that path that I traveled down, whether it's incarceration, addiction, or both, right? I want to show others what is possible.
Hmm.
Change your lens and your filter on the way you view life, and you operate at a higher frequency. Anything is possible.
Anything is possible. I mean, even a
Anything.
podcast from your prison cell.
Right, exactly. And so it's twofold. Like I want the book to help others reach further than they would have otherwise, after reading the book, to show them what's possible. So, because if I can do it, anyone can do it, right? And then the other thing is, I want it to be a message, a story for other companies to see, like, maybe it's not so scary hiring somebody with a criminal record. Maybe these fears are unwarranted. And this is kind of like, that legacy mindset, that legacy thinking. If Microsoft can give somebody a second chance and look at what she's done, maybe we should consider it too.
That's incredible. That's absolutely and positively the truth. And what a beautiful, beautiful goal. What a beautiful goal to open up doors for our brothers and sisters that are running into those same challenges. One of the things, you'll love this, Maine, what we're doing, which is interesting. We've been approved to work remotely,
Mm,
right? Isn't
yeah.
that's groundbreaking stuff, right?
Dude,
So
I was blown away when I came onto your podcast. Yeah. I mean,
podcasts or the awakening
all
this
of it.
or the
The
all
work,
right.
the podcast, the fact that you're interviewing me right now.
Yeah, we have to, this is what we're doing, right? We're doing this
Yeah.
work together. We're opening doors for other people.
Yeah,
This isn't about you and me, Miss Shelley Winner.
I
You are a
know.
winner, by the way. This is about everybody else. And
It is.
if you and I can, I call it I've coined it in my PhD work, I've called it the Bigfoot effect.
Yeah.
So in 1967, Bigfoot wasn't too far away from you where you grew up, right?
Right.
So they filmed this creature in the woods, whether it's a guy in a suit, whatever it is. They filmed this thing, and nobody was talking about Bigfoot except the natives.
Huh?
They filmed this thing in the woods, this Bigfoot walking in the woods. Next thing you know, they have colleges studying cryptozoology now. That's a
Yeah.
true thing. What you are the Bigfoot, my friend. You walked into and I'm saying that in the most kind way. You walked into Microsoft and you did something nobody else did. And we have living, breathing proof of that right now.
Right.
That's the Bigfoot effect.
Mm-hmm.
Now you know what you've done. You've opened the door for millions. There's 80 million people affected. You've opened the door for 80 million other people to have jobs. Ladies and gentlemen, anybody listening to this call, everybody should be clapping at home right now for this woman. You should be clapping at home for this woman because what she's doing, nobody else has done. And that's the stuff that I like. I like that these are the stories I like going after. You know why? Because you're a change champion, Miss Shelly Winner. You are a freaking change champion. You're transforming the system from the inside out, my friend. If you had if you had anything to say, I mean, if you could share a message with the audience and you just wanted to put something out there, what would you say?
You know, I would say that fear is a liar. Fear is the number one destroyer of all success. Now, fear never goes away, but if we can learn to dance with our fears, then anything in life is possible. You know, there were times when I had so much fear that I wanted to give up, but I just kept going because I knew that if I listened to that fear, like I had always done in my past, and that fear ruled my life, but I knew that if I challenged that fear, that who knows what could have happened. And thank God I did, because look at where I've gotten today with my life, the success that I've achieved. And it was all because I chose not to buy in to the fear, that internal conversation, that voice that was telling me I'm not good enough, I'm just going to lose. Why should I fight? You know, it's all bullshit. All bullshit. So,
Nice. I
yeah.
love it. So what's next? What are
What's
we
next?
doing next? What's our next one?
We're gonna do, I guess.
We're gonna come back for a book talk. We're gonna come back. What do you
Yeah,
want to do next?
yeah. So once I launch the book, we'll definitely we can do something. I think, you know, if you want to do a interview with Jeremiah, my husband, and I, that's a funny story too. I mean, that's I think people will enjoy that. The way we met. Him
Yeah, I
and I
love that.
had a crazy.
I'm getting fascinated. You know what?
Yeah, go ahead. Mhm.
No, go ahead, please, please,
Oh
please. I think
no,
we're just getting a
say
little.
him and I had we have a pretty crazy story as well.
Nice. I'd love to capture that narrative. I'm fascinated with. I've stayed single in prison for 16 years. I met a woman in grad school and fell in love.
Aww.
Yeah, it was for a while, and then it kind of unraveled. You know the challenges of being in prison and the
Yep.
things we can't do, the limitations that we have,
Hmm.
the frustrations. I mean, she flew all the way up here to Maine from Florida and got up here, and they canceled visits because of COVID. They didn't even
Yeah.
tell her. They didn't even.
Yeah.
So she went through the ringer with being with me in here, and holy Moses, I'm so interested with relationships that happen though from and after leaving prison. I'm so interested to showing because you're in a healthy, successful relationship. I'm really fascinated and interested in showing society that that's possible. That's the other thing that we need to debunk.
Right.
That
Yep.
we can actually love. We can be in families. We can. I see a little doggy in the background. We can have little doggies, and
Yep.
you know we can have homes, and we can flourish, and we
Yep.
can look at you smiling. We can be happy. Uh,
Exactly.
that's the key, and I think that's what we're debunking. So I just want to say thank you very much. I appreciate your time. I appreciate being with you this evening, and thank you for being part of the awakening, transforming from the inside out, my dear friend. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon.
All right. Well, thank you so much for having me on the show, and thank you for the work that you're doing to transform the world as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a journey. It's a journey one day at a time. We're going to keep it going.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right.